guys, it's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio, and I'm super excited because we're going to you're on the sunrise, and it is in fact the final hour. But don't worry because I'm here to share a whole lot of amazing and interesting information with you to make sure that I keep you updated about the very latest that happens in the world. All right, so don't forget to be a part of the show. Don't forget to share your thoughts and opinions with me because I would absolutely love to hear what you have to say as well. All right. So you can text me on 078 share your thoughts, share your opinions because that will be absolutely amazing as well. All right. And now I'm very excited to be here because we're going to be talking about a lot of things that are related to COVID-19, but also to you as an individual, right? And what we're going to be talking about today is if workers should actually have the right to disconnect. All right. So make sure you stay tuned. But before we head into the conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, go follow us on our socials, and that way you can actually make sure that you're always informed and updated about the very latest. All right. So all you need to do is just like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, just to make sure that you're always informed and updated about the very latest in terms of news. What happens in the world, what happens here in the United Kingdom. That's in fact the best way for you to be updated about literally anything and everything. All right. And I also want to very quickly, tell you that you can download our app because that's available for download on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, which means that you can listen in for free from anywhere in the world at any time of the day. All right. And without going on with this, let's actually head into our conversation because what we're going to be talking about right now is if workers should actually have the right to disconnect, right? Now, something that we've seen, something that we've actually had to get adjusted to is how much our lives have changed ever since the pandemic began, right? And, obviously, this has meant that a lot of us have had to work from home. We've had to adjust to so many new things, right? And even for me, it's been pretty much it's been hard, right? Because when you're working from home, you're essentially blurring that line that exists to differentiate your work life and your personal life, right? So in instances like that, when that line has become blurred and it's in fact quite hard for you to differentiate between your work life and your personal life, then should you actually be allowed to disconnect from work? Because the truth is our mental health has actually gone down the drain, right? It's basically gone downhill, if I'm not mistaken. And the thing you need to keep in mind is that in addition to the pandemic, in addition to a lot of us losing our jobs, in addition to a lot of us having to adjust to these new different things in our lives, our mental health hasn't been on the best of terms either, right? Because working from home, if anything, has just caused a lot of people to work overtime, right? Now that you're working from home, your bosses tend to think that they can give you unlimited amounts of work since you're at home, which honestly, in my opinion, is like, I don't think so. I mean, you're not even supposed to contact me after my work hours. So what are you doing, right? And that's just how I feel. And the truth is, you're not actually allowed or you're not actually supposed to contact your employee after their specific work hours, right? Now, this happens to be one of the biggest problems, not just in the United Kingdom, but in fact, all over the world as well, because we have something called, this toxic hustle culture, right? And why I have to mention that to you is because all of us tend to think that we can't move on with our lives if we don't sacrifice every free minute of our day to actually do our work in office, right? And that makes absolutely no sense to me because I mean, I'm not supposed to spend all of my free time and all of my overtime just at office trying to, work and try to, make sure that every free minute of the day I do some kind of work, right? And the truth of the matter is because this hustle culture has become so prominent in this day and age, people are finding it very hard to disconnect from their work lives, right? Even when they're at home on their off days, they still sometimes respond to emails, they still sometimes respond to texts, and that is in fact one of the biggest problems that are currently there within our society, right? So COVID has actually caused this whole epidemic of hidden overtime, and this particularly affects women. Now, the reason I'm saying it actually affects women is because right now, you have a lot of these women who are struggling their life, they're struggling their home activities like taking care of children, doing some household chores. But in addition to that, they're also struggling with work. They're also struggling with doing their office work, and this has actually resulted in a lot of women having negative health impacts and even mental distress. Because come on, if you have so much of a workload to finish and your boss is giving you more and more work simply because you're stuck at home, then obviously you're going to have some sort of mental distress, right? And in addition, if you're thinking of if you're thinking of all of these parents, or rather these single parents, especially moms who are keeping their house together, they're taking care of their children, they're doing their jobs, that is in fact a huge burden on them, right? And this is why people have called upon this right for workers to disconnect from work, because it's actually finally getting to these people, and they're finally beginning to realize how not having that break from work in you might actually result in negative mental health for you, and a lot of detrimental health effects on your mental health. All right, and now we're actually going to head into a small break, because after that we will be back to keep talking more about this. So until then, make sure you stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio, and I'm super, super excited to be here on this beautiful Tuesday morning. So, I was thinking to myself, like a little while back, how fast time passes by, right? Because if I was just thinking, or rather, my sister asked me when the day was, and I was like, oh, you know what? It's the 17th of August. And she's like, it's the 17th of August. And I was thinking to myself, the time has passed by so fast, and I don't know if it's because we've been stuck at home, or just this year, these 1.5 years actually went by so fast because of the pandemic. However, I mean, while thinking of how fast time went by, it's also crazy that this year is going to end in almost another 4 months, right? And that is just crazy to me. So that's what I've been thinking about. But if you have been thinking about how soon time is passing, or if you've been thinking about why you need the right to disconnect from work, well, then the best way for you to share your thoughts and opinions with us is by being a part of this show, all right? So you can text me on 07852473473. You can text me, call me, share your thoughts, share your opinions, because I would absolutely love to hear what you have to say with regard to what we are talking about. All right. And there's so many things happening in the world and so much of things that I need to keep you updated about. So don't be afraid to text me, call me, let me know what your thoughts are. But also don't forget to go follow us on our socials. All right. Now, if you like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, you can actually make sure that you are always informed about the very latest in terms of anything and everything. All right. And don't forget to download our app either, because that's available for download on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. And that way you can actually make sure that you're always informed about the very latest. All right. And now let's actually head into our conversation, because we have so much more less to talk about. The workers' right to disconnect, right? So to head back into this conversation, I was talking about how we have this hustle culture. Our work environment is actually very toxic, because for you to be recognized as one of those employees who deserve to be there or who deserves to get a promotion, you essentially have to come to work really early and leave office really late and try and put in all of basically work overtime even on your free days, and every free minute you have you must dedicate to work. And this is the sort of culture that is currently present within the work environment, right? And it's not something that came up this year or even the past year. This has actually been there for a long time, except we just saw how bad it was last year, because the pandemic sort of forced all of us to stay at home and do our work. And that's when we started realizing, look, I don't have time to spend with my family. I don't have time for myself, because I'm so busy working in my office, right? Now, that was, in fact, the biggest concern that a lot of people have. And even people who are part of this hustle culture, they've complained of how hard it is to essentially break away from this sort of hustle culture as well. All right. So to actually very quickly get into our conversation now, this report, or this right to disconnect, was actually a research that was conducted by a think tank, right? And in this report, what they essentially said was that people need to be given a right to disconnect, right? So essentially what they did is they called for two amendments to be made to the Employment Rights Act of 1996. And this was essentially to make sure that workers have the right to fully disconnect from all work communications outside working hours, right? And that also means that they can bring employment tribunals for any breach of that, which I think is in fact something that needs to be done, right? Because I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I've noticed this a lot, right? Especially ever since the pandemic, I've seen so many people essentially having to put or rather do so much of work while they're at home, and that the employer's justification for that would essentially be, oh, you know what, since you're all working at home, then you might as well just do all the work from home. Right. And essentially, what these two amendments are going to do is that it's actually going to suggest that an employer should not require an employee to monitor or respond to any work-related communications or do any work outside of the worker's agreed working hours. So if your job is from 9 to 5 and your boss contacts you at, 6 p.m., then you can essentially take that, then you can actually take him to court for that, because that is not allowed, right? And if you basically subject your worker to any detriment because they refuse or because they say they can't do that, well, then you might also be able to take them to court, because they're actually breaching that agreement that is in place, right? And this, I think, in my opinion, I feel like this would actually help with us moving forward, because the situation has gotten so bad, right? People are finding it so hard to disconnect from their work. So having an amendment like this in place, having a contract like this in place, it would essentially force these employers to actually manage and get all the work done within the employees working hours, right? And that would actually mean that a lot of people would then have the right to disconnect from work, right? Now, obviously, when we're talking about this, something we need to keep in mind is there are other industries where you need to make exemptions for, right? Now, in some industries, you can't actually not contact them after working hours. For example, if you're a doctor, then you are essentially required, you have to just agree to the fact that I just wish people would agree to the fact that or rather doctors would rather have, part of the agreement would essentially be that if you are called to work at any given time of the day, then they would essentially have to come. And the reason is that when you're a doctor, you don't necessarily get the break, and that's just a part of part of that job. So in essential industries, essential places like that, there would be exemptions for those specific industries, and that is what that conversation is about. So if you support the right to disconnect, if you feel like you should be able to allow, or rather that you should have a right to disconnect, well, feel free to share your thoughts with us as well, because here at Relax Radio, we're all about making sure that we campaign for your rights and make sure that you have your rights, right? However, now we're going to head into a small break, and after that, we will be back to keep talking more about this. But until then, make sure you stay tuned.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday. And what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be? So that there's a goal. And then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this basic cash flow projection calculations. And it's what we use in financial planning all the time. What we say to clients is we say, okay, what is your goal? What is your objective? Where do you want to go to? And we discuss that in a lot of detail and over most of the meeting. And then the rest of it is saying, okay, in your exact circumstances, with your risk profile, with how you feel about investments and pensions and taxes and where you are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education,